A couple of weeks ago I mentioned I'd be working on the script for the short film Sam Amet. In doing that, I've come across a couple of things which don't really work for me, so I've had to make some changes. Everything started with asking questions about a location. I mentioned before I wrote this with Scott Hines, the actor, and I'll leave a link again below. And there was a location, and we kept asking the question, why are they there? And isn't there a better place for them to be? So it didn't make sense for them to be there if there was a better place to be. So we either had to change that location to be more logical maybe, or to be more realistic, or we had to give the character a really strong reason for being in the location they're in. And that was the discussion that I was having backwards and forwards with Scott. And in the end, what we came up with, I still haven't run this by him yet, was I made the location that the character was in, gave them a stronger reason for being there. And that is what I think works best. And what that does, or what they did, I should say, is lead me to think about other locations. And I looked at the location of the first scene. And now, having gone through the process of reviewing that specific location, I looked at the first scene and I thought, well, that's not working for me now either. And I wanted to make it different, more interesting. And I realized that also if I changed that first location, that the story, there would be a narrative, a stronger narrative through the locations which parallel the story narrative. Not only in location for itself, but in the surroundings, the amount of people in that location, all things like that. And I realized by changing the initial location as well, that it would flow on through the whole story. So I changed that one too. So I guess what I'm saying is that you've got to look at location. Well, I think you have to look at location like a character, because it has meaning. It affects everyone in that scene, everything around, and everything you put in the location as well, whether they be props or the colors you choose, everything. It has an effect on the story, it has an effect on the characters. So you can't just randomly say, oh, well, we'll choose this location, we'll be fine, we'll shoot there. I mean, the temptation is strong to do that, because usually when you have a project, you're excited. You just want to get on with it. It's really worth taking a step back and looking at the interplay between all the elements. And sometimes as well, it's tempting to look at a location and think, wow, that would look so good. But if it's not right for the story, it's not right for the story. And especially in short films, you have such a short amount of time to tell a story, you don't really have any leeway, or very little leeway, for things that you might be able to add into a feature, where you could have more layered approach, and you could put tiny little lay tiny little foundations which build on each other through the film. You don't really have that time in a short film usually, and especially one like this one, which is 7 or 8 pages. So you have to be really strict with yourself, and that sometimes means giving up things that would look fantastic to be able to tell a better story. And making that decision about the location I mentioned at the start led me, like I said, to change the first location. But it also led me to thoroughly review the other locations, there are many, and just see what they mean. And the thing is that every time you change anything, whether it's a location or even a line of dialogue or a prop in a scene. It could have knock-on effects which you don't envisage at the time, but you only see in the end result if you charge in without sort of trying to analyze as best you can what the implications would be. Now, you don't always have the time to do that, and you can't catch everything, of course. We're all humans. But when you do change something, you really need to go through a process of how does that affect everything else, all the other elements of a film. Something you need to be wary of when you're writing scripts that you're going to direct yourself is that you make a whole lot of assumptions. You've got things in here, ideas and shots and, the way it could play out, and you don't always put them in the script. Not because you don't want to or you don't think they should be there, but because they're already in here, you kind of forget them in a way, and you make assumptions. And when you read the script, you get it. It's all fine. Perfect stories unrolling in front of your eyes. But if you give it to someone else, they'll see jumps, they'll see gaps, they'll wonder why this is happening, they'll wonder why they're going over here, they'll wonder lots of things. So you have to be really careful. The way I try and look at it is that I make the assumption that I'm not going to direct it, that I've got to hand this script off to someone else and they're going to direct it, and they have to have everything they need in the script. So, and obviously a good way is to show other people. So, like I mentioned earlier, I did this with Scott, and so I send things to him, and he'll give me feedback like, he was the one that pointed out that initial location issue I mentioned at the start of this video about, well, they're there, but isn't this other place a better place for them to be? And when I'd written, that little bit or made changes to that bit, I didn't, I made assumptions in my head. I didn't write them in the script, and they need to be fixed because my assumptions were wrong. Not only were they wrong, I didn't put them in the script for other people to be able to pick up that they were wrong. Scott did because he'd be working on it with me, but you can't make assumptions. It's all got to be in the script. So any director, any type of director can pick it up and run with it. Looking for a short film producer for Sam Amet yet. I mentioned in a previous video that I would, but when I came across these challenges, I decided it was better to try and get the script in the best shape I could before showing it to a potential producer. They still might find, many problems in it even then, but I have to be as confident in myself with it before I can show it to someone else. And then we'll see how it goes from there. So hopefully I'll start looking in earnest in the next couple of days. In parallel, I also have a number of short film scripts that are in various stages of development. So I'm also looking for someone who might be interested in working with me to get those scripts finished. So that's another thing I'm doing. I'm just starting to reach out to some people, see if they might be interested. But my thinking is that it'd be great to have a number of short scripts ready to go, because even if you get a little bit of money from somewhere, you can go out and make something. And this is working in parallel, always working in parallel with trying to think about how to get features made. But that's a whole different dimension of finance to be able to make a feature. So, but shorts, and some of the ones the ideas I want to develop with someone else, quite short and quite simple, and it wouldn't take much money to do. So I want to get all these shorts sort of ready to roll, so whatever happens, I've got a few things in my pocket that I can say, well, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, along with having that feature films. So I think it's important to, if someone asks you, what have you got, what are you doing, what can you show me? I think you have to have something there, because you never know when an opportunity may arise. So I'm trying to get all these things sorted out in parallel, of course. So I'll just keep chipping away. I hope to see you in the next one.